let's kind of keep traveling down this road. Let's talk about the relationship of a publisher or someone who's reaching out to an artist that they want to work with that artist, they want to work with you. Give me some best practices. What are some best practices as far as like how to approach, how to negotiate, how to ask for revisions, any of that kind of information you can share.
I think the best way these days to hit up an artist is like cold calling them, like DM them on Twitter, at them on Twitter if they have a Twitter, message on Facebook. If they have an email, email them. It's yeah, like honestly, every artist is just waiting for that to happen, basically. Uh, so it can be as informal as it needs to be, I guess.
How much should I have ready to go as far as like what I need? Because it's one thing to reach out to an artist and say, "Hey, are you open to commission? Are you available?" And if they say yes, okay, now what? What do I come back to them? Do I just
Oh,
give the
okay.
full 5 pages of ideas, or like tell me what's a best practice there?
No, I think the best thing to do is give them the pitch. Like, hey, so currently we're working on this. We're currently looking for this kind of role. Uh, we were wondering what your experience is with this. Here are some examples of what we're looking for, and finally, like, what is your time frame looking like? And could we get a quote or a rate based on this information? And then once the artist responds with that information, then you take a minute to like review their work. You get back to them like, hey, like thanks for responding to us. We're gonna review this. We're gonna take this into consideration, and then like we'll hit you up with our final decision. That's a little bit formal. It can be less formal than that. You can be like, hey, thanks for reaching out. We're excited to work with you. Uh, we'll reach back when we have like the timeline sorted out and all these things. I think the more you can uh, express like what you're expecting out of this artist, like in terms of time frame, workload, uh, quality of work. Something I love is when clients tell me, "Hey, we don't need this to look great. We just need it done fast." Because that puts in my head like an expectation. Okay, this can be something that will take less time, so I can fit it into this part of my schedule. And like I know they have like a expectation of quality of work that doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, which is great because it means like okay, they're relaxed. They can, as long as it's functional, as long as it's done, it doesn't have to be perfect. Um, and then always ask about quotes right away because it gives artists the like it let artists know that you have a budget. And that you're not just like going around shopping for like the cheapest option, which does happen. Something I don't like is when I am reached out for work and nobody gives me an idea of like if they know my rates or if they want to know my rates. And then when I ask them like that's when the budget question comes up. Like if you want to avoid the like what's your budget question, ask for rates and quotes right away for like time and work needed. When the opposite of that happens and I give people my quote, I'm already expecting them to ghost me because they're just shopping around for the cheapest option, basically. To be frank.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When it comes to timelines, I've worked with some artists that they wanted to get paid half up front, half at the end. Some have set up in thirds. Some have set up timelines of, okay, I'm going to deliver like the very rough sketch, and then I'll do the ink, and then we'll do the actual color, and then we'll do the finalization. Like they wanted every step along the way to be approved and all that. And so I know every artist is a little bit different, but in your perspective, from your experience, what are your thoughts on setting up milestones and timelines and that kind of thing as far as the work being completed and work being paid for?
I always ask for payment after the files are sent, like the final files, when the work is done, basically. I tend to work better when I know I'm gonna get paid. Like it has to like that does motivate me. Like if I don't do this, I won't get paid. If I do this, I'll get paid. Like that's basically what it boils down to. It's different for a lot of people. I Now I will say the smart way to go about that is to have things in writing, like have a contract. If you're the kind of person that takes payment after the work is done, have a contract. Have like a record of what you are expected to do and how much money you're expected to get paid. because in the event that people don't pay for something, then you're like, hey, you promised, here's proof of it. And I'm not going to say you threaten legal action, but you're like, hey, you know what a contract is, right? It's an agreement. If you fail that agreement, something's going to happen. So that's one way to do it. And then other people prefer just payment in advance, which is like the less hassle kind of way to do it. But the reason I don't do that is because I want to hold myself more accountable. If I get paid in advance and then I suddenly start slacking on the work, that looks really bad on me. Like that is like the client is wasting money that they already paid. Um, so it's a little bit too much pressure for me. So I tend not to do it because of that.
Okay. Do you have any? You don't have to mention any names, but do you have any like horror stories of people refusing to pay or ghosting you when you've already done a ton of work or anything like that?
I'm thankful that a lot of clients I worked with have been really good about payment. The only time something bad happened was actually my fault, and I'm okay to talk about this. But so for one client, I wrote down in my agreement that they can pay whenever their crowdfunding campaign ends and it's fulfilled. You can already see where this is going. Uh, so the Murphy's Law thing happened, and of course they didn't even have a campaign, so they didn't make any money. And in writing, they don't have to pay me anything because my stipulation was if you have a campaign, you will pay. They did not. So they were developing this game and they didn't even know themselves how they were going to get the money. That's on me. Like I should have asked them about that. And they found a publisher, but then that meant like they have somebody who's going to publish the game. They don't need crowdfunding anymore. So I was kind of left there like, huh, I just screwed myself over. Like they don't need to pay me. I don't have to enforce this. But again, thankfully, um, I'm not joking. Like 3 to 4 years down the line, that person got back to me and asked me how much do I owe you, and they
Wow.
paid me.
So it just took a little while.
It took a long time. And at that point, I was like, I'm not going to fight this because it's my fault. So I gave up on it entirely. Years later, they approached me like, hey, so how much do we owe you again? And I'm like, this much. And that same day, they paid. It worked out in the end. But yeah, that's kind of like a word of warning. Like, you really do want to be careful with how you set your own stipulation, because it is meant to protect you, but sometimes you self sabotage. Like, if you're not thinking of like possible outcomes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess there's also some benefit to talking to other artists that have already traveled down that road. You know, if you've never worked with a company that's going to do a crowdfunding campaign, you probably want to reach out to artists who have and say, hey, how did you structure your contract? What did you put in there? What are some horror stories that you have? And then take that information and then, do a little bit better so maybe you're not having the same experience.
Everybody does it different, so it is worth reaching out and seeing like what works for you. Like what works for me does not work for everybody. Again, it goes back to like the winding path of your career. Like it's different for everybody, so it is in your interest, in your best interest, to communicate with as many other of your peers and your coworkers and artists that are willing to reach out to you and express this, and kind of go through and help you out with that. Like I've met artists that have insane contracts. Like the way they get paid is brilliant, and I don't know how to even express it now. But like things like royalties, how do you even negotiate that? That's something I don't know how to do because it's like, well, and the thing is because I mostly like working with smaller clients, and I try not to do the whole royalty thing when it comes to like independent workers because like I don't know if they're gonna be big, like, and I don't know if they like I don't know if I want to like treat them that way because it kind of puts them in a weird place where it's like, if my project does not succeed, I am still going to have to pay you for this. And I know that's not like don't take that as advice. That's just how I personally work. But I know that some other artists like to do instead of having like a large sum, they'll do like a smaller sum, but then they'll have like a royalty fee or uh I forget what it's called. It's like a percentage paid for like every time you use the artwork. Now, again, This isn't for everybody. And to be honest, like the people who can get away with this are people with like a huge reputation. Like big artists can do this because like it's just a way to like make sure that the people they're working with are utmost professionals. Because after a while, you do want to like curate who you work with. You do want to like work with people who have your similar interests in mind.